Spurs have a bit of a problem, and I think this is a problem that I kind of predicted before the season started with the kind of squad we've shaped. But I think this issue was really highlighted in their last game against Bournemouth. Although I don't think these kind of conclusions are set in stone. I think there's ways around it. There's solutions, which I'm going to discuss. But I think our build-up play in terms of the first phase is a little bit of an issue. And I think we might have some frustrations in our games going forward in terms of playing out the back and being able to progress through the thirds. So I want to get into it and just kind of go into how Bournemouth really stifled our play in the last game and really stopped us from being able to build up. So this is the sort of press they went with. What they did really well is of course they were aggressive, which is a massive part of pressing, as everyone knows. They were really fit, very quick to get there. But what they did is really left this left side open in terms of they really made sure that our two best progressors were marked at all times, or when they did receive the ball at least. Semenyo, who's on the left, would really press on Porro. Evan Nilsson, who's obviously the striker, drifted over to the left and really put Romero under pressure. They had their 10 who kind of just sat on Palhinha. So what happened is Van der Ven had a lot of time on the ball. And why this is because they know that Romero is our best passer of the ball from these areas. So they didn't want him to be able to play. I think part of the other thinking behind it was, of course, they know that Kudus is a major threat and Kudus can receive at any point with a man on his back. So what they said is, let's really make sure that right side is off limits and allow them to have it on the left. As we know, Van der Ven is an okay passer, but he's nowhere near what Romero is. And I think this was exacerbated by the fact that we had a left back who was right-footed. So the angles to kind of get out of this weren't great because you have Spence coming in, which makes them easier to kind of shut off, because obviously if you stretch them out a bit more, then this is where the gaps start opening. But if you have someone like Spence, that kind of makes it easier to manage because the spaces are smaller. So we had this kind of situation. And what we kind of tried to do, I guess at times, was ping it up to Richarlison's feet, which he really struggled to hold up. But a lot of the time we continued, so that was one of the options. I think a lot of the time we continued to try and play through midfield. But I think, and this is where I believe our main issue is, these two players are not progressive enough on the ball. They're too safe. They occasionally will hide as well, so they don't offer themselves in the greatest way possible. And I think that's where a lot of our problems came from. I also think the fact that Johnson was the man here meant that Van der Ven couldn't play this pass, which I think he's actually okay at, kind of wrapping it into a left winger's feet. But because Johnson hasn't really got the technical ability to retain the ball there, especially with a man on his back, we really struggled. And Van der Ven had a lot of the ball, but couldn't really do much with it. And I don't think much of that is Van der Ven's fault. I'll come on to how I think he could have done better here. But I think a lot of that is, you're not going to have two world-class passers, or it's unlikely we are. And Van der Ven is a good passer. He's not a great passer. So a lot of these passes were kind of a little bit inaccurate to Richarlison, which kind of put him stretching and then off balance. And he wasn't really helpful either, but I don't think Van der Ven was the issue here. I think the issues come further forward. So I just want to show you some screenshots if we get into kind of the real details of what the issues were. But before I go into that, please do remember to subscribe and like the video if you're enjoying this content. A lot of you guys who are watching are not subscribed. It would really benefit the channel. Would allow me to make many more videos diving into all things Spurs if you do subscribe. So please do that. But without further ado, let's get into the screenshots. So obviously this is what I was talking about. So you can clearly see here you have Tavernier ready to close down Palhinha. You have Evan Nilsson on Romero, Semenyo on Porro, etc. But when Van der Ven then does get the ball, obviously they start to press him. Yeah, so it's clear that Van de Ven was the open option. Same here again. They're shaping their press, allowing that left side. They know that both Spence being a right footer, with Johnson not being able to receive with his back to goal, meant that that left side was nowhere near as threatening as the right side. So that was a major part of it. I think my issue here is the midfielders. They didn't do enough off the ball to be able to receive it off Van de Ven, because Van de Ven had so much of the ball but really wasn't helped out by his midfielders. So if we take a look at the midfield here, Van de Ven received it in this kind of deep left area. There's a massive space here, and not one of our midfielders is there to receive. Now, obviously, if Palhinha comes in here, he does drag a midfielder with him, which is why I really like technical players in this position who are happy to receive the ball while under pressure. Of course, this player is going to obviously follow as well, but that doesn't mean that he can't receive it. Player with a high technical ability is able to receive it in this area, turn out, and then you've got someone like Bentancur hovering over here with plenty of space. But Palhinha receives it here, turns out, and Bentancur's got loads of space, and we can play. So that again shows their kind of their lack of willingness to go and receive it in the pockets and be able to help us get out. I don't think they're necessarily trying to do this, but they just don't trust themselves to go and receive it in this area. The same kind of applies here. You've got Bentancur this time, who's dropped in between the centre backs, which is okay. It's not really benefiting us. And again, Palhinha's not here to come and receive the ball here. Neither of them are really showing an intent to get on the ball and then help us progress. Got another sort of example here where Bentancur does then receive it. But what he does later on in this clip is simply play here to Romero. For me, he's got lots of space there. A more progressive player might carry it into this area, wait for a little press, and then maybe pop it out to Porro over here, or pop it out to Sarr over here. Oh, wrong one. Play it through to Sarr over here, Porro out here. And I'm not asking these players to do this every single time. I think this is a thing where in that position, you have to be really safe on the ball, because if you lose it, you're under real threat. So I'm not asking this every time, but there has to be a point where you take a risk in this area to help get us up the pitch, especially when we're struggling so much to do so. So I think that is massive. And then again here, this is a sort of third example I had. Bentancur receives it here. He has so much space over here to sort of turn into, drive into. Sarr's all on his own. If he just receives it here, drives into this space, 5-yard pass to Sarr, and we're out. But what Bentancur does is he simply plays it back to Vicario, I believe, rather than checking his shoulders, knowing he's got space and turning out. So I think that sort of highlights the issues with our midfield. There was so many more screenshots I could have grabbed where our midfielders, they're not wanting to receive it in these areas, and when they do, they want to play safe. And I think Bentancur and Palhinha are probably the two safest of our midfielders, which is why I think Thomas Frank got this one wrong, and I think why he was out-coached on the day by Iraola. So I think there are a few more solutions to this. I was merely talking about this game specifically. I think we will face this problem at times this season, but I don't think we should be facing it to this extent, because I think there are solutions which could really help us, and I'm gonna talk through a few of them now. So it's unlikely that we'll only face Bournemouth again once this season, but in terms of similar situations where teams might set up this way, or just in terms of our general build-up, I think I have a few solutions to how we kind of get through some of these situations. I don't think we have necessarily a really good deep-lying playmaker yet, which is an issue, but there's ways around it for sure. So if we start by Van de Ven himself. So let's say Van de Ven faces another situation where he's allowed lots of the ball. Romero's cut off by the press. So Van de Ven has this kind of space. I think a couple things would really help this. I think having Udogie at left back, who can basically take this player away. Obviously here, it was likely that Tavernier jumped. So then obviously everyone jumped. You had kind of more of this shape. But here, if you have someone like Udogie, you can really stretch their press, which opens up this lane. And I think Van de Ven needs to be braver at times to do this. But his carrying is so good. He can easily step into that space there, and he's already then out the first phase, and we can play. No one's going to keep up with him. He's got really good carrying ability. He's strong. He's actually got good disguise in how he initiates his carries. So he might, shape to play wide to a doggy, but then go and carry like that. So I think that's a really good solution. And I think the fact that Spence was there was a bit of a kind of mitigation, but I also think Spence could have held the width slightly better, which opens up that lane for Van de Ven to travel with the ball. So that's one solution to kind of how we really struggled. The next thing I want to discuss is the midfield profiles themselves. So we have Palhinha and Bentancur, who I said are way too safe. For me, our midfield three should now be, in these sorts of games where we are expected to dominate, expected to have more of the ball, we should be the ones kind of setting the precedent. This is the midfield I would try and lean towards. Have Bergvall, Sarr, and where is Simons? There we are. I think this is the three that we should be aiming towards. And I think the key here is Bergvall. Bergvall is a player who never, ever, ever hides. He wants to demand the ball. He is strong on it. He's happy to receive with a man on his back. He's just a much more progressive but brave player on the ball as well, but also has the technical quality to back it up. He can drive with it. He can pass to a decent level, not an elite level yet, but I think he's got the ability to get that passing up to a really good point. But he is just a more progressive player, and I think with him picking up positions like this, often we had kind of this situation where Van de Ven would be out here. You'd have someone closing him like maybe like that, and you might need someone like Bergvall to drop in there. See, this is quite a scary place to receive the ball, but Bergvall has it in his locker, and maybe if it's too risky, he might just pop it back. But when maybe the press is a little slow, he'll check his shoulders, he'll know he has a bit of space, he can turn out, and then he can drive with it. And I think Bergvall brings so much more on the ball than those other guys do. Sarr, I just would have in this team for other reasons. I don't think he massively benefits us in that situation, but I think the key is Bergvall. But obviously Sarr, we know Sarr's qualities, and that's for another video basically. So I think Bergvall is the key. So that's another way to really help us in this build-up phase. But there's two more things I want to discuss, and they are based around our new signings. So as we've come to know with Thomas Frank's system, I think the 10 is going to be really important in helping us out here. I think there was times where obviously Sarr was playing the 10 against Bournemouth, and he did drop into these areas at times, but he's just not going to have the same effect as someone like Xavi Simons. I think Xavi Simons, especially in situations like this where they're going man-to-man, gives a centre-back a real question, because they're going man-to-man. Let's say Van de Ven receives the ball, everyone jumps, this guy comes here, and then with Xavi Simons travelling to here, maybe the centre-back will follow him. But if Bergvall picks up the ball here, and Xavi Simons has dropped in here, it leaves the centre-back in a really difficult situation. Does he follow, which then leaves this massive gap here, or does he not follow, and then Xavi Simons has all the time in the world to receive and carry it into the final third? So that is the key. If we can actually, against a man-to-man press, if we can actually get out and get someone like Xavi Simons in a space like this, the world is our oyster. There's going to be times where teams do sit off a lot more, and then it's more about Bergvall, obviously, or whoever this player is, receiving it here, and can he pass through the lines like that? I think Bergvall, again, has the best abilities to do that. But I think, again, Palhinha and Bentancur in this situation, without being pressed, they'll have no problem receiving it because they won't have anyone pressing them. But it's when they then do turn on it, can they punch through the lines? And I think Bergvall has a decent level of doing that, and then we can see that there. If we go back to the way that the Bournemouth set up, the other thing, which I think the final thing I want to discuss, is our striker. So there was times where we realised we were really struggling to get out, and Van der Ven and others went long. A lot of the time this was to Richarlison, and then he was really struggling to get a hold of it. And I don't think this is Richarlison's strong point. I think he's okay at it sometimes, but receiving back to goal, he always looks off balance. For me, it's just not his strong point. At times that we then went to go long to Kudus, which is a kind of a riskier pass. There's more that can go wrong if you're playing someone out wide. You know, they're right on the touchline. They have less of the pitch to kind of dominate. So you want to be able to play into your striker's feet. But if we bring in someone like Solanke, obviously his hold-up play is excellent. And we know what he can do. And then you can kind of get Simons getting around him. He can set it off there. And then all of a sudden, we're on the attack. And they have to really recover transition-wise. But also, the other person is Kolo Muani. Now, Kolo Muani, not only can he receive like this, back to goal, hold up the ball, link up really well. But what he can also do, which I think suits Van der Ven in these kind of situations, is run the channels. If you have someone like Johnson who doesn't really want to receive there with a man up his back, you can play that long pass over the top. Johnson can be a bit of a decoy, maybe come short here. If the fullback follows him, it leaves that space, and Kolo Muani can run onto it, and then we're away. So I think there's a few different solutions to how we can deal with this a lot better. When we haven't got the perfect profiles to play out, but we've got good enough solutions to our issues and players that can really help, but they may not be the players that you kind of traditionally imagine to help. We don't have that Adam Wharton type player. What we do have is Van der Ven, who can carry really well. We have Udogie, who can stretch the play more. You have Xavi Simons, who can drop into sort of number 6/number 8 positions. You have Kolo Muani, who can receive to feet, but also receive in the channels. So there's lots and lots of different solutions to our problem. But it's a problem nonetheless, and it's a problem that needs solving. But yeah, that's what I think our main concern at the moment is. But I really do have confidence in us getting through that and really pushing on. But if you've enjoyed the video, please do subscribe. Please like the video. Please comment down below any other kind of solutions you think of in terms of this issue. And let me know what you guys want to see next in the next video, who you want me to kind of analyze, what you want me to analyze. But until then, come on you Spurs.